I'm Mike Izzo, and welcome back to the J&B Bodyworks podcast, a conversation show where we talk to guests about cars, life, and everything in between.
Thanks again for having me on here. I apologize about being a little bit late. I was initially on the line with I got a new car today, so I was figuring out like all the details with that. So
What'd you get?
I bought a McLaren 720S Spider.
Sheesh.
Christmas gift for myself.
Congratulations, brother.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. So the reason behind the car is I have never really owned anything particularly fast. I had an Audi R8 V10 for about 6 months. It was a 2014. I did a rear-wheel drive conversion within about 12 hours. As I'm sure you've seen my videos, I like to send sideways. So having an all-wheel drive car was really not allowed. So had that car for a little while, but it was rather boring and ended up wanting to do something a little bit more crazy. So I actually rented a 720S while I was in Miami for a couple of days. Figured it'd be a good test to make sure that I actually like owning the car and using it as I would like to use it. And was like, all right, this is what I want to do. So I found a black Spider with it's very, very Batman spec. Everything's black. It's about like, only thing that's I would say unique about it, besides being all black, is it has red seat belts, which is
Okay.
That's about as much red as I get, but
That makes it fun. Yeah, no, I get it. It Audi R8 just sounds so boring, dude. It just sounds
well, actually,
like
so it's really interesting you say that. Today, my team and I had some developments that came out for a new Audi R8 exhaust system. That we developed with some equal length race headers, which will be available in the middle of next year. But
that's exciting.
We're finishing the development process. We've had a full setup for that car, but we have new equal length headers which equalize the pulses from each side, because the earlier Gallardos sound amazing because even firing order. But the later cars, the 5.2 cars, have an odd firing. So we developed some headers in a rear section that fixes that issue and has all the exhaust pulses exit at the same point. And the car sounds like a 5-liter Gallardo. So
that sounds amazing.
For those who see this podcast, you'll be able to check that out here sometime soon.
Yeah, so I want you to tell us. So your name is Austin Huffman.
Yes.
You are welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. We're sorry that we had to reschedule so many times, but I'm glad that we finally got you to take a minute for us. It was us having to take a minute for you, but thank you so much. So you're the founder of a company called Valvetronic.
Yes.
And so just in our little bit of research that we did about you, is it tongue in cheek? Your tag says stunt performer, or are you a stunt performer?
So it's a good question. I'm a very lucky boy in the fact that I've been around certain movie productions and other type of stunt driving, and just the way that I like to drive, doing it on the street has put me in some, let's say, rather more nefarious situations. So
Really?
and I can tell some stories on here, but
yeah, please.
With those situations, I've realized that there's an opportunity for me to use my skills to do certain movie productions, YouTube partnerships, and try to have my content be able to be viewable and enjoyed by many more people, but also done more safely and in a more rigorously upheld fashion. So that's why I kind of got into doing stunt performing. People do think it's kind of a side gig or a joke for what I mostly do, because people know me for Valvetronic, but I've tried to do more stunt driving gigs because not only they're so fun, and you end up meeting some really ridiculous people and get access to some serious machines and get permission to do things that you wouldn't expect to be able to do. So I'm fortunate to have some gigs like that. The video just came out with Eric, channel that has about 16 million subs.
Yeah.
They rented a Chevy Suburban, a new one.
Okay.
They're like, can you do some stunt driving with this? And I'm like, I can try. So they said, all right, we're going to get people from the YouTube streamies, like famous people, and you're going to pick them up, and then you're going to lead them on a police chase. I was like, all right, I can do that. So they had like this parking lot and stuff reserved, and they were like, okay, like they didn't really know. I didn't know either what the vehicle was capable of, and neither did they.
Who does? I mean, that's not like a typical stunt driving car.
Exactly. So in my driving over there by myself, I went into a parking lot on my own and figured out that if you hold the traction button for the right amount of time, you can get it to do a full traction off and ABS off.
Wow.
And this thing would slide like a Hellcat. It was amazing because
Was it
it's
scary?
so heavy. No, I mean there's so much weight transfer that you just would swing it and it would just slide. It was amazing. So figuring that out, I'm like, all right, now it's my time to shine. So
Yeah,
all
now
the
we go
creators,
crazy.
they get in the car and, or I'm sorry, the host of the show, they get into the car. I'm like, all right, like, what do you think? And so I start doing J turns and donuts and transitions through the parking lot, and they're like all blown away. I'm like, we got a good show here. I think we'll be in good shape.
So this is a good question, because for myself, really, I drive a front wheel drive Mini Cooper, and I have a similar feature on the car where I
Okay?
can hold the button long enough and it turns it off.
Yes.
Give me some beginner tips to safely, right, get in your car sideways. Doesn't have to be my car, but for those out there who want to have some fun like you do in the streets, or
Okay.
let's say in a
Not on the
parking
street.
lot.
We
Yeah,
gotta
in a
we
parking
gotta
lot.
that big headline. Do not
Yeah.
try this.
Yes,
On,
exactly.
but it's tricky because you having the Mini Cooper segues us into a particular type of vehicles. Let's say front wheel drive vehicles.
Mhm.
A well balanced front wheel drive vehicle, you can get something called lift off oversteer, where you turn in, you enter a corner too quickly, and then you enter the corner with no power on, apply steering, and the back is just going to rotate out, and you get these
Really?
like fun slides that you don't even have to really correct. You can just keep your foot planted, and the car will just like it's more of a power slide than it is a a drift. So
I gotta try
you can
that.
give that a shot. Try that in a big parking lot. Like try coming around the corner and just lifting off, and you'll feel the whole car just want to rotate.
So go into it fast.
Go into it really, really quickly, yes,
Yep.
and
Cut
then
the power.
turn and then cut the power. Yeah, lift off, no power.
I
And
gotta
then as
try
the
that.
car begins to slide, you can begin applying throttle. And the throttle, instead of holding the slide, it's going to straighten you because the front wheels are going to pull in whatever direction
That's
that
dope.
you're facing. So give that a shot. And I must preface, if you do crash, I'm not responsible.
Listen, we own
Good.
a body shop, so that's totally fine.
All right, then it's
So
easy.
that would be actually really good content.
Easy fix.
What we should do is we should fly over to the Bronx, get you to drive it, and you surprise me by crashing it, and then and then we'll fix it up.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm always down for an adventure. So
That's awesome.
that's the
What about if you're trying to what if
like,
say you find yourself in a spin that you didn't plan on? How do you recommend people safely getting out of it?
it does depend on the type of vehicle you're driving, and I'll suggest a couple. I'll say two things. The first is,
Balloons.
wow, that was cool. I'll have to
Just so you
use
know
that.
it's gonna be a good point.
If you find yourself in a situation where you're completely out of control, if you're driving a manual vehicle, 2 feet in, clutch and brake, and then try and apply some measure of counter steer. What I find a lot, especially when I teach people how to drive or how to drift and how to power slide a car, is you end up finding that people want to overcorrect. They're afraid of spinning into the slide, which is actually the best thing that you can do. So,
Okay.
not that I ever condone this, and I would never do this, but hypothetically, if I happen to be drifting on the street, the best thing that you can do is if you do slide too far, you just spin into the slide. So you're coming around the corner and the car is rotating, and then it's too much rotation. You just spin like this, and you're in the middle of the street.
Hmm.
If you don't do that and you go this way, that way, and then boom, you're into the guardrail, and then you really got to call you guys to fix the car because the overcorrection really hurts a lot of people.
Right.
So I've been in situations where if you have a lot of space, you can easily just spin into the slide, apply more steering angle than you think that you need to get yourself rotated, and then just throw the car in neutral and roll backwards. And hopefully you're not going fast enough where you roll back into something. But usually that's what I always recommend doing, especially if you're tandem drifting with somebody else. Like, let's say
Mhm.
they're sliding with you. If you spin into the slide, they're going to see, because it happens all in slow motion. When you lose control and you overcorrect and you fly off into something, it's everything is at 10x speed. But if you
Right.
spin into the slide, people who are behind you, they can predict what you're going to do. If you just, they can go around you on either side, they know what's going to happen. So
Yeah,
that's what
that's actually a really
I
good
recommend.
tip.
But that's usually in a rear-wheel drive car. And if the viewers of this podcast can take anything away from learning how to slide a rear-wheel drive car, similar type scenario, learn how to do it in a controlled environment. Go to a racetrack, go to a big parking lot. I've always found this, and I'll give people these tips. Don't use them too much, because then we might get in trouble. But if you do go to a parking lot in the rain, or some place where there's not a lot of traffic and you are sliding around, if it's a public place, try and stay away from like the white lines if you're going to be
Okay.
drifting with the white lines, because then you're technically covering the parking area, which is a problem and you could get in trouble for that. But if you're sliding around in the rain, which is the best time to do it, when it's like a nice drizzle out, the fact that it's raining, the sound of the car sliding doesn't spread nearly as far. So
Mm,
let's say if you're going to slide at a spot for 10 minutes, you'd have to leave because the police will come, which is their job to do. But we found in the rain, if you're sliding in a safe and controlled area, you can slide for hours and no one
wow.
comes because it's not that loud. So I always recommend uh, sliding in the rain, teaching yourself how to control the vehicle in the rain first, because you can do it at much lower speeds. And
Mhm.
the grip threshold is just so much lower. In any rear wheel drive car with any amount of power, you can just apply throttle and the car is going to want to slide. So
That's a great tip. The one thing I never would have thought of is the sound aspect. That's actually a really great
That's
tip because
that's what gets people in their trouble, and that's why having a valved exhaust, and I'll do my own selfish plug here,
yeah.
really helps out. Because always when I recommend, if I take like people who are on my team who are a part of the Valvetronic team, they want to learn how to drive, we go in the rain and valves stay closed, because we just don't want to attract any attention. When the police inevitably come, because they will show up at some point, they're doing their job. Be nice, be respectful. Said,
Yeah.
hey, if they say, what are you guys doing? Say, hey, we're just, I've had this happen all the time. And my response usually leaves the cops rather dumbfounded, just because I try to be respectful, professional. And I say, officer, we are here because this person is looking to learn how to control the vehicle more safely in a controlled environment. We figured this space was reasonable to exercise the, just driving characteristics of the vehicle, and we wanted to do it in a safe environment where we're away from people and we're not damaging property, because it is wet out. There's no tire tracks being left, and we're just trying to do it safely so we don't have this person is not going to cause an accident on the road not knowing how to drive properly. And they normally look at me like this. All right, well, you guys be safe.
Yeah.
Say, all right, I appreciate that, but you guys need to
You
leave.
gotta go.
So, and
Yeah.
normally that's the situation. Is unfortunately, you see a lot of videos on YouTube of people just, it's one escalation after another. You got to throw your ego out completely,
Always.
whether it's this situation or many other situations like it. It's like there's two avenues, right? You could either get into a huge fight, or you could have a great conversation. It's just one interaction and one thing you say. Because if you say, well, why you coming over here? Don't you have more better things to do? The
Right.
guys would be like, all right, well, fuck you.
You're getting a ticket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be even worse too. They
Right.
could. I've seen situations where they threaten to take your license away, and then I've had a situation. This is a funny story. A buddy of mine was sliding his 240SX. I was teaching him how to slide his
Sick.
S14, and we're in this big parking lot, and it is dry, but we're in an area that was an industrial zone where I knew it was getting repaved, and the ground was terrible, and they were redeveloping it, and so four state troopers just roll up. They just come flying in, and credit to Mr. Ed Bolian, who I've had the pleasure of meeting many times and learning some of his mannerisms. They pull the kid out of the car. They're screaming at him. So I walk over there and I just say, gentlemen, I just wanted to give you some things in the periphery about this area. I'm sure you guys know, but this is getting repaved. It just got purchased by a new contractor. They're going to be tearing up the road. We're in a safe environment. We're not anywhere near people. I'm sure you guys got called because of the noise, to which we apologize. We don't want to be outside of noise ordinances, but this kid is a young kid, good kid. He's in university. If he gets arrested for something like this could hurt his ability to even continue school,
Yeah. Yeah.
because he's looking to be a little bit of a safer driver here out on the roadways. And yes, I know that we're having a good time, we're having fun, but we're not doing it at the expense of putting others in danger.
It's an
And
awesome,
I
awesome.
happened to talk to the right person who was actually the chief, or not the chief, the supervisor who was there. That's the person that I spoke to.
A lieutenant or something.
Yeah, and he ended up going and talking to the other the police officers who were there at the scene, because we were probably 100 yards away, and ultimately the kid just got a ticket for like facing the wrong way on the roadway or something. So easy, no, not an issue.
Yeah, probably no points, a couple dollars, and that's it.
And so the kid came back up to me. He said, "What did you say?" I said, "Well, you just need to be respectful, because the thing is he was kind of being a dick, and you just got to throw your ego away and say, this is their sandbox, and it's not my sandbox. I need to be more respectful for things like that." So it's very important.
Yeah, I mean, you just gave so many great tips for people, and I think one of the things I just took away from what you said was be prepared. Like you had done research, and I think what people don't understand is law enforcement. Their job's very difficult, and day in day out, they deal with a lot of dangerous situations. So when they have what they assume is some hooligans making noise and causing issues, it's the
Exactly.
last thing they want to deal with.
You humanize
And
yourself.
that's
You're
it. And I've had very similar instances. So I want to talk a little bit about your company. But before I do that, since we're on the topic of driving, I want to ask two questions. So first, if you had a magic wand, unlimited budget,
oof.
what would be your dream? Let's start just since we're talking about driving and sliding. What would be your dream car to build to slide and to have fun with and do stunt driving?
Interestingly enough, it would have to be something with four doors, because
Hmm.
something that I found, and it was actually something I was reflecting on in my drive over here as I was on the line ordering this or getting the paperwork together for this car, is it's not necessarily about the machine. It's about being able to share the experience with others. So if I were going to build something to slide, I would probably, interesting you say that, because I'd love to do like Formula D. Um,
Uh-huh.
I've got some friends who do it, and they say the budget to do so is extremely high if you want to be competitive, because quite frankly, if I were to get involved, I have a little bit of a problem with attention. I want to have it all. So I guess 50% of having a problem is knowing you have it in the first place. So we're working on that one. But because of that, the budgets that I've seen that they need to do it competitively, you need a lot of money to get after it. So I got to sell some more exhaust before I do that.
What
But I
real
probably
quick, what are we talking about? Like, give me like a crazy budget that you would think somebody would need.
do need, to get involved with Formula D and do it at a really high competitive level and be after it and get proper sponsors involved, I would say that you should set aside a minimum of 250,000.
What?
Oh yeah, oh
I
yeah.
thought you were gonna say like 75,000 most.
Mhm.
Wow.
We'll do it well. I mean, some of the cars they're building, everything has to be hand fabbed, relocating radiators, the cars. You're building the car from scratch. Say you
Wow.
take like a guy I know, Connor O'Sully. He's pretty gangster behind the wheel. He's a good driver, and he's got an E46. I think a 330, but there's no 330 left. It looks like a 330. It looks like an E46 M3, but it has, I think, an LS in it. It's all tube chassis. It's got the relocated radiators to the rear. It's it's a full race car, and that stuff's not cheap.
Hmm.
So something like that, if I were going to allocate that type of budget, would be very cool. And quite frankly, if we tier it out, I would want to build like a drift taxi, like an F90 M5, tons of power,
Wow, that'd be sick.
sequential transmission, something that would be, but also able to. The best drift cars, at least I found, are cars that are actually quite grippy. Because if they are grippy, that means your speed is high, and that speed usually translates into tire evisceration.
Mm.
So the more wheel speed you have, the more smoke you get. So high horsepower, the ability to put the power down, and actually the front of the car should be real pointy, because you want to be able to control the slide well. So that's probably what I would do for like a drift car. But if we're talking unlimited budget and my ability to build out the dream garage, when I was 21, I was fortunate enough. My dream car was the Audi R8, and I was able to purchase that. And now I just turned 25, so I've had my quarter life crisis, and I think that's where the 720S comes in. But my real dream car, attainable dream car, which I hope to have in the next year or so, is a Porsche Carrera GT.
Mm.
I happened to be going to my buddy's shop, the Legends Auto Boutique, the lab owned by my good friend Gio. And as I was
Okay.
on the way, I happened to pass Rapazi Motorworks, and they're like the king for servicing Carrera GTs. And I walked in there, and I believe that the gentleman's name is James or Justin, and I kicked myself for not remembering his first name. He's the owner. And I walked in there and I said, "Hey, I'm the owner of Valvetronic, and this is my absolute dream car, and it's why I hustle every day. And I just would like to spend 10 minutes looking at cars." And he was like,
That's awesome.
"That, come on in."
That's
So
sick.
yeah, so that's my attainable dream car. I love the app. I love the sound, the look of the car. It's from the perfect time frame for me, like that
Hmm.
2005 generation of cars. They had enough electronics to where they were able to be used, but not enough to where it really took away from the experience.
Right.
I found nowadays a lot of the stuff that I end up driving, and I'm very fortunate to have driven a lot of really badass machinery. Even the 720S is numb in comparison. I drove Ferrari 458 owned by a friend of mine named Brandon, 458 Destroyer. And
Hmm.
I expected that car to be brilliant, but I didn't know how. But it was just the challenge, because if you put a novice driver in a car like that, the car will hate them. And I remember,
Really?
yes, as I was communicating the story to somebody, they said to me, they were like, "Do you see what's in the center of the steering wheel?" Like, "Well, yeah, it's the badge." They said, "It's a horse. If you know how to ride the horse, it'll reward you. If you don't, the horse will know, and
It's
it'll
gonna
keep."
buck you off. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was a rather strange way of conveying that experience, but that was definitely what I experienced with the vehicle. Is it was really a challenge to drive, and you had to get every shift right. You had to have double down or double clutch the downshift to get it right. It was just that's the type of drive that I like.
Yeah.
Uh, I've got friends of mine who they're all into. I need the fastest, latest, greatest. I got to have Apple CarPlay. I got to have the
Right.
jazz. I say, pound sand to all that
Yeah.
rubbish.
It's
I want to
more
really
about the driver experience than it is some of that stuff for you. I love that. And we had
most
a gentleman on recently, Mike D'Ambrosio from Machines with Souls, and he has an awesome website that he reviews cars. And what I like about the way that he reviews them is um, he talks about how, like these days, car media is very heavily influenced by 0 to 60s and horsepower. And for the average layman who's driving a car on the street, they're not going to notice that tenth of a second. But it's how you feel behind the wheel. And I think that's kind of like what you're saying. Like it's certain cars can push certain buttons for people, and I think that's how I feel about cars. I don't always care to drive the fastest car, and this is a terrible comparison, but when I'm in my Mini Cooper, I have a lot of fun. It feels like a go kart.
I'll match that. I have a 1995 Mazda Miata that I drive
There
almost
you
every
go.
day, and
There
that
you go.
car is brilliant. It's so slow. I look so ridiculous. There's a rule with that car: the top can never be up unless it's parked, but the top has to be down at all times. Snow, rain, whatever it is, it's got to be down. Just
I
because
love that.
it's part of the adventure. And I've got some videos of us like sliding around in the snow and getting stuck and just having a blast.
That's
And
awesome.
there's something freeing about driving something that's low power and also low cost. I had a situation recently where someone bumped into me in a parking lot. I also have a 2007 Porsche Boxster,
Mm.
and base model 5 speed. I bought for 10 grand. It's got 50,000 miles. Nice
One
car.
of my favorite cars.
Yeah, and I was like, I want to make this car sound like a GT3. So we did equal length race headers, over axle pipes, and it's just ridiculous. We'll be putting out a video about that car soon. It's
Cool.
full RSR sound, but it's so slow. And it's also so fun. And because it wasn't an insane amount of money, I live about 30 minutes outside Philly, and I was going downtown to go out with some friends. And I left the car parked like in a garage, and I noticed that someone had hit the front of the car and scraped the front bumper. And I mean, that sucks. Just move on. You
Yeah,
just
but if it was the 720, you might cry.
yeah. I mean, that's another thing as well, and it does concern me a little bit for that ownership of that vehicle. And I had it with the R8 a little bit. My driving style is not going to change. I'm going to really push the car
Hmm.
and just make sure that I have good insurance.
Yeah.
So
Or you can ship it down to J&B and have us wrap it up. And
yeah, I was going to say if there ever is an issue, I'll be definitely calling you guys,
there you go.
because um, with the way I drive and some of the things that I do with the cars, it's not an if, it is definitely
One.
a when.
That's
So
awesome.
definitely be needing your assistance on that.
Yeah, we're here for you. I really want to hear about Valvetronic. Absolute kudos to you. One of the reasons why we really wanted to have you on is because I didn't know exactly how old you were, but I knew you were a younger guy. Happy birthday,
Thank you.
2025.
Thank you.
I want to give you absolute props and kudos because a young guy to start a business and be a hustler like you, it's super inspirational for a guy like me who's also young and not as young as you,
We
but
got to,
yeah, it's important to see a guy like you who's done so much with your life already. It doesn't, one of the things that I can catch from you already that's awesome is there's a big difference between conveying confidence in a way that's like, you don't want to be that cocky guy, and you could tell you're confident without being cocky. And that's a trait that I really love in people. And
I've
so
had
I
to,
want to hear about Valvetronic. I want to hear about how you got into that. Tell me about your brand identity. What do you want people to feel when they think or see the brand? And just fill me in on what you guys do over there.
all right. So we've got some time. So I'll start all the way from the beginning.
Please.
When I was 14 years old, I had always had the interest in cars. And as I was kind of getting into high school, my identity became cars. And I remember as I was 14 in the summer, my family had a summer house in Rhode Island. And I remember seeing this Porsche 996 convertible, excuse me. Ended up talking to the guy, and I'm a young kid, real green. I got my buddy Sam with me, and we're both 14. We ride over on our bikes to see this car. And this guy's super nice guy. And I had always researched, weirdly enough, like the Fab Speed catalog, so with the exhaust and the suspension, all the stuff they were offering. And I happened to notice, all right, the car's got wheel spacers, the car's got, it had the Turbo S brakes, which I thought was really strange. So the car had ceramic, or not ceramic brakes, but it had like the yellow, or not the yellow
Mhm.
cows. They had the red cows, but they were the bigger
Right.
version. So I noticed all these things, and the owner looks at me and he goes, "How do you know all this?" And I kind of told him, I was like, "I'm really an enthusiast. I love this stuff." He goes, "You want to come for a ride?" I'm like, "Absolutely."
Yeah,
So
of
this
course
guy,
I do.
yeah, I mean, he's no idea who this guy is, which don't do this. But the guy takes us for a blast. This car is, it's tuned, no exhaust work, so it just sounded like a really fast vacuum cleaner. But he takes us for a rip, and me and Sam were loving it because we've never been in anything fast before. So that kind of began my first business adventure, which was detailing. Because the guy said to me after going for a ride, he said, "I need somebody to clean the car. It's always dirty. It sits outside here." And I'm like, "Well, actually, I've been wanting to get into detailing. My uncle at the time had a Mercedes SL, like SL 550, but
Mhm.
he's very meticulous. He always would clean the car on Saturday. Everything was clean. Everything was fresh. Inside of the wheels, always fresh. And he was about that. He loved that as part of his routine. And so he taught me how to do a lot of detailing stuff, what waxes to use, what products to use, whatnot. So I got into doing detailing. Started with this 996 convertible and just ended up doing car detailing. And that's how I brought in a decent amount of money to kind of get started with my being able to hopefully one day buy a dream car that I always wanted to own. So we'll fast forward, and I end up getting my license at 16 and a half. Before then, I had asked my father, I said, "Hey, what car are you going to buy me for when I turn 16 or when I get my license?" He laughs at me and goes, "You can buy anything that you can afford."
Wow.
Was the good thing. I'm happy that I had that, because if I didn't have that and I was in a little bit different passion, he said, "Oh, yeah, you have whatever you want," I would not be the man I am today. That's for sure. And I ended up, with a decent amount of money, and I ended up buying a 2012 BMW 335i, an X-Drive car, coupe, black sapphire with a red interior.
That's a really great first car.
Really great first car. I was very fortunate. It was very expensive. It was like $30,000, but I had saved up everything that I had ever earned and I purchased that car. So I had the car for about 6 months and did everything to it. I was working at an automotive, audio and install place called
Mhm.
Luxury Details. And that was like my first real job where I wasn't working for myself. While I was doing that, I was kind of getting paid. I was using my commissions that I was earning to buy parts. So I bought like the ST suspension, I bought wheels, and I got into doing exhaust work. And I did a
Mhm.
bunch of research, just delving in online so much. And this was at the time where the 2012 cars were not unlocked.
Mhm.
Only the 2011 like E chassis cars were unlocked. So 2012, mine had a new DME kind of from the F chassis,
Right.
so I couldn't be unlocked. So my car didn't have the pops, and that's what I wanted. I wanted more. I wanted that more than I wanted like a night with Kate Upton. I wanted to exhaust her. Gee, how do I do this? And I ended up learning a lot about like, okay, like I got to do the downpipes to get some more sound. I got to do the BMW Performance exhaust. So I ended up figuring out and getting all these pieces. And I'm still like 16 and a half, 17 at the time. I get the parts, do the mods of the car, and I'm still working for this shop. And I've poured everything into this car. Really enjoyed the car, but an interesting thing happened to me. I think it was in May. I don't exactly remember the date, but I was a senior in high school. I had this car, and I'm sorry, no, I was a junior in high school. I had this car, and I picked up this girl one night,
Was
and
it Kate Upton?
it was not Kate Upton. Wow,
Okay.
that would be such a cool story.
Yeah,
My story
no,
live
still a
up to
great
this.
story.
But I picked up this girl, and I ended up driving her back to her house in Natick at like 2 in the morning in this BMW. It's 2 in the morning. It's a nice night. It's probably 50 degrees. And I come back to Wellesley, which is the next town over, and I'm flying on a road called Route 9. And I pass a Wellesley police officer at 109 in a 50.
Oof.
He's facing this way. I go flying past. And initially, my reaction is chase is on. So I turn my headlights off, me being a complete moron. I turn my headlights off, but those 335s, they have DRLs, like the running
Right.
lights are always on in the back. So that didn't help at all. So I keep going. I blast past this guy, and I had probably a half mile or probably 3/4 of a mile until I needed to make a U-turn and turn around to go into my neighborhood. So the road's a
Mhm.
50-mile-an-hour road. It's 2 lanes either direction, and there's stoplights. And there's a turnaround where you can kind of get into like the neighborhoods on the side. So you would turn around and you would go to your neighborhood. I'm coming over the hill. I come down the hill. I pass the cop. There's a left. I go through a stoplight, which was green, and then I go to get on the brakes to make that U-turn. And I was on my winter wheel and tire setup. I missed it. I didn't brake fast enough.
Oh God.
And I come over the next hill, and there's another Wellesley police officer blocking.
Oh God.
So I'm like, oh no, I'm screwed. And I ended up slowing down. They pulled me over, and I got arrested. I was 17.
Oh,
Took me in, got arrested. Um, got 109 and a 50, which wasn't good.
isn't that immediate license taken away?
Yes, yeah. Well, so this is very interesting, and it's unfortunate. It's not unfortunate, but I kind of deserved it. Certain counties do something called they will propose an immediate threat. So let's say that this is exactly what happened. Instead of being able to just revoke my license, because you have to go through the court process and all the stuff, like if I had gotten convicted, license away. But what the police can do is if they see that somebody is clearly a threat, they initiate an immediate threat, which just revokes the license. It just basically
Jeez.
don't even have one. So that's what they did to me. So I did not have a license, and in order to pay for the legal fees and try to get myself out of the situation, out of it meaning hopefully I could get some community service. And this was my first time having a situation like this. So I ended up getting it figured out, but I had no money because I had spent it all in this car. So I sold the car.
Oh,
I got 27, $28,000 out of the car, and I paid, I think my attorney fees was like $7,000, $8,000. So I had to pay those, which is my blunder. And I
price of doing business.
that's cost of doing business sometimes. Learned a lot. And when that happened, I was still real green. So I was like, oh, I'll be fine next time. Never have learned from my mistakes. So that process goes through. I lose the car. I don't have a car for a little while. Unfortunately, I end up getting my license back. And then I buy an E46 M3.
Nice.
Imola red over cinnamon. Bought the car out of
Beautiful.
Long beautiful car. Really, really love that car. And had that car for a little while. But then I wanted to jump back into the 335s because I had always been interested in that kind of turbocharged aspects. So I ended up selling that car, and I bought a Alpine White 335 6-speed red interior,
Nice.
extra car. And that car is kind of where the Valvetronic, let's say, mindset began.
Okay.
And
The
it began,
brainchild.
yeah, it began with this. I had purchased the car, and the car had it had something called the PE mod, which is the performance exhaust mod, where you take the rear mufflers out of the car and then you open them up and you straight pipe them and then you weld it all back together and you put it back in.
Interesting. Okay.
From factory, all those BMW 335s, they all had an exhaust valve on the driver's side, but it was only used for like an emissions control device and providing some sort of back pressure. The 335 ISs had it, all the 335s, each chassis had it. And obviously, these two cars that I had, both the black car, my first car, and the white car, had it. So because of that, I ended up figuring out, I'm like, all right, well, this car has these straight pipe mufflers, but it's got the valve. Why don't I just use the valve to be a noise control device, keep the valve side straight piped, and then I'll put another stock muffler back on the passenger side, which doesn't have the valve. So I had this white car, and also too, the car that I had purchased was MHD Stage 2. It was 2011. So this car was able to be unlocked, had the pops and cracks, had the BMW
Mhm.
performance, had the BMW power kit that had been flash. You could get like the pops and cracks and stuff. Had that, had a JB4, had the whole shooting match. That was a really a great car, and it's where this stuff all began. And I ended up doing the called it the one half PE mod. And I found a guy in Canada who made these valve controllers where you could control the valve. So I messaged this guy. I said, hey, I want to buy one. So I bought one and had this one half PE modded exhaust. And it allowed me to control the loud and then have the car be actually quite docile. So my 335 X Drive car had free flow catless downpipes. Then it had still had the factory midsection with the factory mid cats.
Mhm.
X pipe from factory. All the cars, all the 335s had that. And then it was the two mufflers in the rear. So this one was straight piped with the valve, and this one was stock. So
Wow.
then once I had the car and people knew that I was doing this, I would go to these meets called the Shake Shack meets. And they were on Thursday nights and they were behind the Chestnut Hill Mall Shake Shack. We would get together. There'd be 20, 30, 40 cars sometimes. And we would go and have Shake Shack, talk about cars. And this was like the highlight of my life. I couldn't wait for Thursdays
Thursday night. Yeah.
to hang out with the guys in the parking lot and just shoot the shit about cars. So there was a YouTuber, up and coming YouTuber, who is now very, very successful. His name is Tedward, Tom of the Tedward YouTube channel. And back at this time, he had like 5,000 subs. He had said, hey, this exhaust you have for the 335 is really cool. Let's make a video. So we made a collection of probably, I think, 4 videos on this car, and they amassed like 500,000 views. Because
Wow.
wow, this is really cool. It's relatable content. The car's not that expensive. It's like a $15,000, $20,000 car at the time. And because of that, people asked me, or I'm sorry, a lot of people had asked me in that circle how I did that modification. But Tom, being the content mastermind, was like, why don't you tell us how you did this? So I spoke about the process that I used to build the exhaust. I said, you
Mhm.
straighten one side, get the valve controller, do some free flow, do some callus downpipes, whatever. I put my Instagram in the video. I was like referenced as the person who was the creator. And a bunch of people, they saw the video as the video was climbing in views, and they messaged me directly and they said, hey, I want to buy this. Where can I buy this?
Mm.
Don't buy it. Just do what I said in the video. And I realized at that moment, this is a business opportunity because people don't want to do it themselves. They want to just buy
Right.
it.
That's where the light bulb went off.
Exactly. So at this time, I was probably a senior at high school. I was 18 at the time. Still had this car, and was ended up getting ready to go to university, and I ended up going to Lehigh University. And people had always asked me of how to build this and how to do this, and so I would give people advice. But then when I got to university, when I got to Lehigh, I ended up getting rid of the white car, and there were some other cars in between. But then I bought a silver 335i sedan, 6-speed, no nav, a titanium silver over a like saddle brown car. Really, really cool car, rear wheel drive. And I had that car, and I wanted to bring it on campus. But at Lehigh, if you're a freshman, you cannot bring your car on campus. So I ended up convincing them that the Valvetronic project of modifying this car's exhaust was a school
Mm,
project and I needed the car on campus. Because, in my high school years, my car was my identity. Like, people knew me as a car guy. And so I got to university, didn't join a frat, wasn't super interested in that stuff. And I was able to get my car on campus. It was extremely expensive, but I paid for the parking pass and I had it, which made me very happy. And then Lehigh University, credit to them, there was a program called Launch Base C. And I'm a
okay.
freshman at this time, and I'm working with the kind of entrepreneurial, it was a Baker Institute of Entrepreneurial Ventures that they had at the school. And so I would be going in there, asking them about advice. Okay, like, I want to sell these. How do I do it? I got myself accepted into a program as I was my freshman year summer at school, like this Launch Base C. It was called the Hatchery, and it was to start this company. And throughout the process, I had the car. I ended up working with a manufacturer in Chambersburg, Monarch Manufacturing, to help me build like the first prototypes. And we ended up making full scale production out of that facility. And
Wow.
I sold my first unit. I think it would have been like August 2018 is when the
What did
first,
that feel like to sell your first unit?
I mean, I didn't really know what it was going to amount to, but I remember on Instagram, because I was like, all right, I'm going to use some social media marketing here because it was free. So I would post pictures of other people's cars, and the caption would be, "This 335 looks amazing. Imagine what it would sound like with a Valvetronic exhaust."
Mm,
And I ended up purchasing the Valvetronic Instagram tag from this guy. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I didn't purchase it. He was nice enough, because I told him about this. I told him about the whole project, and I forget what his new Instagram name was, but he said, "It's an awesome project. Just take the name. You can
that's
have it."
great.
Yeah, yeah, a nice guy. And that's kind of where it began. I had the Instagram page. We started selling units, and I did a pre-order because I had my own car, of which I showed the valve controller, which I reverse engineered and was able to build them myself. And I had this production ready model, and I was building these units. I made instructional videos about, okay, you cut here, 55 millimeter clamp here, 60 millimeter clamp here. And that's kind of where the first sales came from. After I had gotten into that, I think we did maybe 15 or 20 units, and they were $600 or $700 a piece. There was some money going into this, but people really wanted this experience, because a lot of people who had 335s, they would just straight pipe the cars. It was too loud.
Right.
So, and I worked really hard to try to convince people that my exhaust option was the best, because there actually wasn't any valved exhaust options for the E9X 335, and there really still isn't. My company, we built a universal valve muffler, which is taken the world by storm, which is very, very popular. You put it on anything and allows you to have the valves, but that wasn't out back then.
Even a Mini Cooper?
We've actually done a lot of minis.
Really?
That's how the John Cooper works. Yeah. So we can touch base about that. Maybe offline, we'll get you set up.
Awesome.
But from there, I had the car 335. We had our first couple sales. And fortunately, at the time, I had always been doing side gigs where I'd modify people's cars or do like consulting for modification. So I had other streams of money coming in, and I had always wanted an E92 M3. So I ended up selling the silver car, and I looked to find a E92 M3. I found a car in Arizona. It was a Melbourne red, 6-speed, slick top.
Not one
Uh,
you see.
yes,
You don't see
exactly.
that color a lot, especially a slick top.
Yes, 2010 carbon roof car, manual, and it had the speed cloth interior. The only thing it didn't have was it had the double hump nav, which isn't my favorite personally, but ended up purchasing the car, and that's where the kind of Valvetronic version 1 of the electronic flat exhaust came from, because those cars did not have exhaust valves.
Mm,
So I ended up kind of working with some suppliers overseas to try to build us this, because it was too expensive to build it here in the US. And so I needed to find a production house overseas that could help me build this. So I wanted my own logo tips, and I wanted the best quality hardware. So we ended up putting out that program, and I had my E92 as the showcase. And I had a Challenge X pipe on the car, and I really just got after it, pushing
sweet.
sales. Brought on a business partner who was actually my roommate in college, ended up expanding the team, and we just kept snowballing into other projects. I bought a C63 Mercedes. We ended up doing
Wow.
examples on that. And yeah, it was just the ball just kept rolling.
Wow. So it sounds like from what I understand, you had some good resources with the university,
Most definitely,
and
a lot of credit to them.
but what it sounds like really is that you stayed away from maybe some of the more classic college distractions and just focused on your dream. I think that's a really great lesson for young people to. It seems like you just took a risk and you kept pushing.
But what's interesting about that, and I will never, everybody is going to have their own path. My path was very different than most at that university because I had, uh, credit to my mother and father. They have instilled in me. I'm very fortunate to have grown up in a wealthy family, but they said, "This is our money. You need to make your own money."
Mhm.
So because of that, that was always ingrained in my head. My parents are very, very hardworking, extremely dedicated, extremely focused people to their work. And I have to have my own craft. So that was my mentality going in. And quite frankly, I guess this is just more of me as an individual. But when I was in high school, I was actually part of something called What's the Word Mass. And What's the Word Mass it's an Instagram page now, but it was a group chat. In the group chat, there were representatives from every town. I grew up in Wellesley. There was
Mhm.
Newton, Framingham, Lexington, Sherburne, Dover, all these towns, and everyone would have a representative or people from the town, and they would put addresses of parties in this chat.
That's
So
reckless.
this is a little bit of a side story, but it's funny. So I happen to be the representative from Wellesley. I wasn't a very cool kid, so I seldom ever put parties in there. But me and my friends, we would go to these parties, and I would always drive, so I would never drink.
Mm.
Always my gig is I was always the DD, but I enjoyed that because I'm pretty outgoing. I could have a good time without it, and it was always so fun because we would go to these events or we would go to these parties, and that was like I feel like my college experience I ended up
Hmm.
having in high school because we would go to these parties Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, huge 300-person house parties, just massive parties. And I feel like I got my experience. I kind of got cleansed of that. Even though I wasn't drinking, I had already experienced it. I mean, the party started so early. They would start at 8 o'clock. So at
Mhm.
8 o'clock, we'd get there, 9, 9:30, 10. At 10:30, we would head back. I'd be in my bed by 11. It was great.
Yeah.
And
Honestly, sounds like the perfect night for me.
exactly. And so, yeah, it was really a fascinating time. And at some of these parties, some really crazy stuff would break out because I think I was raised pretty well. But hi, Dad.
As dad walks in.
Dad walks in. Um, eh, I have a lot of respect for other people's stuff, and a lot of kids who would come to these parties they didn't. So I
Mhm.
remember going to this one. I think we were in Sherburne or somewhere, and huge house, big place. Kid wanted to be cool. So he just invited everybody. And then we all showed up. And I remember seeing stuff like people stealing stuff. And then there was a situation where everyone was in this like hall in the center of the house. And I remember my buddy Noah Jick was with me, good kid. And I remember he was a really big kid, and I was real scrawny at the time. I still am. But I remember there was something that was said. He was like the owner of the house got into a conflict with someone who was out of town, and like a girl jumped in, and then this one kid like joined the ring of people who were having this conversation. One kid got shoved, and then this other kid just uncorked a perfect right hand
Oh, jeez.
on this guy, and the head went boom. Her head went, or the guy's head went back, and then absolute chaos ensued.
Erupted?
Like
Oh
just,
god.
oh my god, drinks flying, uh, people piling up. It was crazy. But I'm like there. I'm like, ooh, I gotta like try to avoid what's going
Yeah,
on.
you're the sober guy who's just
Like,
trying to, like, stay alive in this situation.
don't hit me. So we ended up getting out of there, and it was just. But stuff like that would happen often. Um,
Wild.
and this is like not like downtown Boston stuff, but it was like these parties would get really really rowdy. But
That's awesome.
it was
I
it
wish
was a
we
lot.
had something like that. I didn't have that in high school or even in college. That's actually sounds like a great idea to
Oh,
just
it was so,
connect people.
yeah, yeah. And now it's a group chat, and I still see the kids like out sometimes, like whether if I'm in Boston, which I am right now, but I would see these kids out. We would just tell stories forever. It was
That's great.
just ridiculous. So, but I think though, making this conversation full circle,
Mhm.
because I had that, when I was looking to like rush a frat, because I didn't have an older brother or anybody to teach me like what the rules and regulations were for like
Right.
joining a fraternity or anything like that. So I didn't really know what to expect. So I would go to parties and like try to talk to people, but I was real green. I didn't really know because I wasn't used to like the heavy drinking, hugely loud music, like unsa unsa, yeah, it's my first time in Hamburg type like
Yeah,
parties that we
yeah.
were going to. I was like used to like chill house parties
So
with people.
so you must have seen a few of my college days, because that sounds exactly
Oh my
what it was
God,
like for me.
it's ridiculous. So that initially didn't entice me. So I didn't end up joining a fraternity. And
Mhm.
I think that that was a blessing and a curse. Now, when I look back on my college years, I've got one friend from university who I like, who was in a frat, who like, we were always just buddies. His name is Trevor Cross. And he's actually the guy, he's the most interesting man in the world. Anything you can imagine, from like making moonshine to like polishing kegs to wiring all my lighting packages for like my
Wow.
Explorer and my light bars for the M3s. He's just the most hands-on, able to build anything individually you've ever met. He's amazing. But he was like my only friend. So I would go, and like he was in a fraternity called ATO. And so sometimes I would go there, but I didn't end up having, I guess, the traditional college experience. But
Mhm.
I think that was definitely a blessing, because when I was in school as well, I ended up starting what is now known as the Lehigh University or Lehigh Drivers Club, which was a club that for people like myself and maybe yourself as well, who were just, I didn't, a lot of kids that I found at Lehigh, they were into like mechanical stuff and somewhat into cars, but they didn't have an outlet. So I
Right.
ended up starting a club where we had, 40, 50 members of people who just liked cars. And we would do presentations and hang out and shoot the shit and just talk about cars. So that was a fun thing. And now actually the club is really materialized at Lehigh. They've got a budget. They did like some hot, I just heard about this recently. It made me so proud. They did like some hostile takeover of another club that was failing and got their budgets. Now
That's great.
buy a, they're going to buy like a Miata or something to have as like a Lehigh
Like a
University.
project, like a club car.
Yeah. But so that was something that I think was a different college experience for me. And I still went out. Junior and senior year, I really had a good time at university, because I lived about 50 yards, less than that, 30 yards from the best bar on campus, or like that was right
Okay.
outside campus. So we would always go there, and ended up having friends like on the baseball team and on other soccer teams and such. So as I kind of got more familiar and actually had an identity at school, it became a lot more fun. I did have a really good time, but I was never in a frat. So there would be, Friday, Saturday night, but I'd be like, I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
But I think that was definitely a blessing, because when I wasn't doing anything, I was like, maybe I should work on this business that I really need to hustle on.
That's what I was gonna say. It seemed like that probably freed up some time. So
Most definitely.
tell me about how who so is it valvetronics.com?
Valvetronic.com. Yes.
So tell me who should be going to valvetronic.com. What's your, ideal customer?
So very good question. Everybody and anybody, I should say. But I initially thought that the reason I did Valvetronic was to make money. But then I realized that is the wrong way of looking around it.
Mm,
Because now the focus is on how do we prolong enthusiasts like you and I's ability to enjoy our hobby? Because unfortunately, it is not far away from where we're not able to drive the cars we want with the
yep,
exhaust we want on the road. And it's coming.
it is
We do
coming.
see it a lot, whether it's inspection rules or whatever. And it's all for a good cause. I'm not a fan of destroying the ozone layer, just like the next guy. But
Right.
there is something so special about, I mean, shoot, let's just take an example. Think about this. Think about the horror of a mother seeing her child look at like an SVJ and just go crazy. And like this woman knowing like this car is so bad for the
Right.
environment or whatever. Like that just makes me so happy to see
Right.
like a young kid who's just about it. He just like, look at this, look at the doors. So when you take this all back to what's the reason why we do what we do,
Mhm.
everyone has to have their own path. But for me, it was really like, this is something that people need, whether it's our universal product, which you can put on literally anything. And I've seen, I've seen this on the most ridiculous cars. I've seen it on Volkswagen Bugs that are converted to like Baja Bugs.
Wow.
Crazy. I've seen it on um, big F-250 gas trucks. I've seen it on Camaros. I've seen it on I have a TRX that I use as like my truck. Got it on there, and I've also seen it on like Civics and Accords, and
Wow, so the whole gambit,
I've seen
everything.
yeah, I've seen a mail truck with it.
No way.
Don't ask. It was just that was crazy. And I also saw like a London taxi that someone bought,
That's really cool.
an old Rolls Royce. I'm like, these are just everywhere, and it makes me real proud because the developments for that product have been so deep because I wanted to work on anything, whether it's going to go on some big 6.5 liter, Ford pickup, or it's going
Mhm.
to go on like a 1 liter Honda Accord. I wanted it to still be a really, really usable product. And I actually talk about this in some of our other universal videos because it's important to convey why should you buy this compared to buying just a regular muffler? Because
Right.
a lot of people they never know the value of a valved exhaust until they don't have one and they've had one in the past. Because your neighbors don't hate you, the HOA doesn't have problems, the cops don't bother you. Quite frankly, I have gotten, and it's on my wall in my office, I've gotten one exhaust ticket in my entire life, of which I fought and won, fortunately. But it's framed on my wall because you just don't get stopped. And I've had situations where I've been stopped, whether it's in my safety car or in other cars that I have, and they're like, "Why is this car so loud?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, officer. With all due respect, this car is extremely quiet. Little rev. This was definitely you." I'm like, you know,
I don't know what to tell you, officer.
I don't know if it was me, officer. There might have been somebody else. But I'm really not your guy here. And
That's
I've gotten let go. Um, there's been situations where the police have known about the technology and they'd be like, "Did you just close the exhaust?" I said, "Actually, yes, we make this product. You should buy one." And that usually,
you just see police cars, the Valvetronics.
yeah, down the side.
Always be branding, man. Always be pushing.
Exactly. So because of that aspect, I mean, it's all about conveying the perfect experience for somebody. So whether it's a $400 product or a $10,000 Aventador exhaust, I seldom ever build straight pipe systems for people because they're really compromised. And I built one for my buddy Gio for his 458. No valves, 2.75 inch, just race Ferrari 458 titanium system. And he had a competitor's exhaust on the car before and just didn't like the sound and ended up getting rid of it and put this on. And he's like, "Austin, I understand what you say now about why you need valves," because he never, it's their show car. They seldom ever drive it. They want it to be loud, loud, loud. And he's like, "I tried to take this girl to dinner and I like we had to go and stop and buy headphones." I'm like, "Yeah,
No way.
you wanted a straight pipe system, no valves, no mufflers. You just wanted the most raw sound." And it does sound like a goddamn Formula One car. It is
That's got to
what,
be a big turnoff when you take a girl in a
oh my
Ferrari and then
God,
you're
it's
like,
horrifying. Yeah.
we gotta get earplugs for this one.
Yeah. So people now, I think people are becoming more accustomed to the fact that they do need valves. And we're trying to have really unique sound characteristics, but also keep the valves because it's really
Mm,
important for a lot of people. They need to be able to exit their HOA or whatever the vertical is. But the engineering processes for building a valved exhaust, like it really has to work. And you're
mm.
working with really high heat components. I have so many burns on my hands and just like touching really shouldn't have touched stuff.
It is what it is. It's part of the job.
This is battle scars. And the thing is about just making a straight pipe system is there's a lot of compromises. You're going to get a lot of drone, a lot of vibration, a lot of frequencies in the car. But if you engineer a really good valved exhaust, you should be able to get the sound quality, but
Hmm.
none of the drawbacks.
Wow.
So that's the experience we're really trying to go after. And we may dabble into more like straight pipe, just race systems, just because people want them. That's what the market has asked for. And you do lose a couple of decibels sometimes when you have valves, not
Right.
because valves are restricted, but more because if there is a muffler, like this is fascinating stuff, kind of going on the geekery route. So if anybody
No, this
turns
is
off
what we love.
now, I apologize. But
No, this is what we love.
if you have an exhaust system and it's straight, let's say we're doing a Ferrari 458 just because we've been discussing that car. Headers, cats, rear section. In the rear section, if you have a straight bypass and it comes out, but it has valves, system will sound really good, be really aggressive. But if you have a straight pipe system with no valves, it's a decent chunk louder. And you think, well, the exhaust is going to take the path of least resistance.
Right.
Why is it so much quieter, even though you have the valves straight open? It's the same design. Just the fact that the muffler casing is present draws a lot of sound. So even if the exhaust doesn't pass through the muffler casing, just because it's there, you get a resonance reduction effect just because the muffler happens to be present.
Right.
So, and I apologize for referencing him so much, but Gio just bought an Aventador SVJ Roadster. And he
Nice.
said, like, I want to go with Gintani. Like, I love Gintani. And credit to Alex and his team. They have built an incredible, incredible sounding system. I'm sure as you've heard.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one compromise though, is those cars when you're in them, they're extremely bassy. And I know
Mm-hmm.
Gio's a man of the town. He's gonna be taking girls out, taking people out in this car. And he's like, what is the best system? I said, the Valvetronic equal length race system for this setup, you'll be perfect. He's like, why? I want the craziest, loudest thing. I said, Gio, from your 458 experience, you don't want the craziest, loudest thing. You want the sound, but no compromises. And
Right.
in our Aventador SVJ system, you can drive that car all day long with the valves open, and everyone else around you can hear the incredible sound, but there's no drone in the cabin with the valves
That's
open.
awesome.
So it just comes down to good engineering with these products. So that's what really excites me, is being able to bring the ultimate experience to the community. Because if you're just looking to sell something to make money, you're going to lose. Like,
Yeah.
you're
100%.
hearing about the wrong stuff. So that's been a really interesting experience for
Yeah.
me. And money is such an attractive thing, but it's also super unattractive the way that it can be construed into someone's life to where they have no
Right.
other existence beside it. So we've
Yeah.
tried hard to have good service, to have, a good
It's the most
customer.
important thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a gentleman on recently, Ryan Friedman, and he sells cars. I don't know if you heard Ryan Friedman Motor Cars. He sells cars out of Long Island, mostly enthusiast cars, and he put it into perspective in a really great way. He said, um, for him, it's the customer, then the experience, then the business. So like money and everything else comes last. And I think that's why he's been able to be so successful. And it sounds like why you're so successful. Excuse
It's
me.
like girls.
So
If
successful.
you don't pay attention, you don't try, it just kind of shows up. It's just, I think it's the same thing. Not to say you shouldn't try, for
I know what you mean though. Like it's the things that you could to kind of flesh out. You just said you work on yourself and
mm,
then everything else will come.
you have to, yeah,
So
you really have to. It's about the experiences. So that's really the Valvetronic kind of ethos, is we want to provide people with the ultimate sound experience for whatever budget they happen to be in, and give people the flexibility to enjoy their hobby to the nth degree with no compromises.
yeah, that's
And that's
great.
why I think we've been so successful, fortunately. And I'm very fortunate that I think the success will continue. I have a lot to learn, but it's really been an incredible journey thus far. So lots to learn though. But along the road, I I'm very fortunate too, because I've realized that it's not necessarily about the products and the business and all those verticals. It's really about the people, whatever
Mhm.
business it is. And I was actually talking to somebody who was a neurosurgeon who's now a consultant for hospital matters and hospital affairs. We just happened to, get talking, and we were chatting about just what is the real verticals of dealing with these types of businesses. And he and I just look at each other and we just go, people. We said it at the same time. That's all it's
Yeah.
about at the end of the day. So.
Yeah. So where can people find you? Where do you want to direct people to? Plug and promote
Oh,
everything.
if they want to see ridiculous stunt driving, enjoyable car videos that are very simple to make, fortunately, with some really good sound, my Instagram is just A from B, the number 3 afterwards, because I couldn't get A from B. Don't ask. And then, yeah, we're on Instagram at valtrent.com. And I've actually got some other kind of companies and ventures that will be coming out. I'm working on with Geo on a new product that everybody's going to see very soon.
Mm.
It is a product that you're going to have in your vehicle that has all your essentials inside. So stay
Wow.
tuned for that.
Yeah, I'd love to have you guys on together maybe in the next few weeks. Talk about that as well.
We can do it up.
It'd be great. And last, is there anything else that you want to leave the people with? Any last minute advice or anything you want people to know about you or anything?
I'll end this on one of my favorite quotes. Fear is just as afraid of you as you are of it.
Mhm.
So that stems from, life is about execution. ideas are really cheap. And I've got some people who they think ideas are the world. And I'm like, all right, execute. And then 2 months goes by, "Oh, I don't know what to do." So the execution is what counts. And so if you're really uncomfortable, if you're really fearing something, when you are most uncomfortable, that's exactly when you should jump.
Mm,
Because regardless of what it is, you have to think about how big could you dream if you knew that you couldn't fail? Because people ask me a lot of the time for advice. They go, "How did you do this? What is the process?" And my reaction is just one word. It's just go. And they go, "What do you mean? Like, what do I do?" And I'm just like, "I don't know what you need to do. You just need to do it. You need to
go.
experiment, try, invest, educate yourself." And it's one of the reasons why I've been fortunate to where someone called me today, and they were a friend of a friend. They wanted to get an exhaust for their BMW M2. And they called me and I said, "Hey, I've only got a couple minutes, but what can I help you with?" And they said, "I'm looking to get an exhaust for my M2." And he said, "Which one is best?" And I said to him, I said, "Let's define what best is for you.
Mhm.
Okay, how loud do you want
Huge.
the car? Do you need the valves? Do you care about having the valves?" And ultimately, he wants to do the Valvetronic single mid pipe, which is equal length. But he said, "I don't really care about the valves. Just want it loud, whatever." And I said, "Quite frankly, you might be able to get a better product from somebody else because we design our products for a particular type of person who needs the flexibility. And if someone doesn't need it, don't buy from us." And that's, I think a lot of times everybody tries to capitalize on every sale they possibly can because money is pretty attractive.
Right.
If you focus on what you're best at, people have asked me, "Why don't you make wheels? Why don't you make carbon? Why don't you make all this other stuff?" People spread themselves very thin very quickly. And
Yeah.
so you are just the absolute best and you are fully committed and you are absolutely 100% focused on being the best and educating yourself. How could you fail?
Yeah.
Really? So that's what I'll leave the people with
That's
is
awesome, dude.
execution. You got to just make it happen. Don't feel people really think that if they fail, they're going to die. And maybe in certain situations that might be the case, but for business,
It's not the case.
you're gonna lose some money. So
Yeah.
you better be comfortable that there's ups and downs in life, and be prepared for a much more fruitful future if you begin executing.
Dude, that was amazing. For real, that was awesome, super inspiring. Thank you. I think you gave so much value in the things that you've said today, and I can't thank you enough. This was amazing.
Thank you for having me, and I'm gonna go make myself some dinner now. Very
Nice, man. Thank you.